Kitterlin-Lynch, the CEO of PAVE Prevention, Proactive Anti-Violence Education. And you're here for another episode of Disrupting the Dominoes, our podcast where we discuss disrupting the dominoes. That's from microaggression to full-blown physical event and how we stop those dominoes from falling. We have an incredible guest today. I'm super excited. I am a huge fan. I have gone down many rabbit holes, just reading and finding things that our next guest has been involved in and developed and researched. I think you guys are going to have a very enjoyable time learning more about her. She is an associate professor at the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. She is a Coca-Cola fellow professor there. She is the awards are incredible, but the most recent, the Excellence in Teaching Award and the Excellence in Advising and Mentoring, which I think really goes to the heart of who she is, which is trying to make the world a better place, helping people and helping people find ways to help themselves. I am super excited about our next guest, Dr. Miranda Kitterlin-Lynch. Welcome, Dr. Miranda.
Thank you so much. And I am a huge fan of yours as well.
Yeah, it really is. I could spend a substantial amount of time every day looking at something that you've written or you've researched. Just really grateful for your life work, your pursuit of creating healthier culture in the hospitality sector. I think I can call it a life's work because that's how I see it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely been a life's work that I've enjoyed doing. So I can't think of a single piece of research that I've ever done that I didn't feel passionate about.
You cannot present the passionate research and the sheer number of articles that you've written without loving it. There's just no way you could. So it comes off very clearly. It's very evident where your heart is and where your passion is, Dr. Miranda. So can you share how you came to this in your life? What path did you take to find your way here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I never planned to be here. I planned to be a genetic engineer. I started out pre-med, and then I just discovered hospitality and it opened this whole new world for me. I worked in full service food and beverage since I was 15, 16 years old. I've worked all over the country. And in being in this environment for so long and having a husband who's also in the industry, I saw firsthand what was going on in our workplaces. And it was a lot of workplace bullying, sexual harassment, substance abuse. Not to say that, there's not great things, but I see these things happening in my lived experience. And when I decided to pursue higher education and was told, oh, well, part of this is going to be research, I wanted to research the questions that I really had. Why is there so much sexual harassment in this workplace, but not in my friend's workplace, who's an accountant? Why is there so much substance abuse? Why is there so much harassment and bullying, right? So that's honestly, I had questions about what was happening around me and I wanted to know the answers.
So very organically,
yes.
Your path took a very organic track. Could you share with our listeners and our viewers what exactly is a Coca-Cola Endowed Fellow? It seems quite impressive.
To the best of my understanding, Coca-Cola gives money to certain institutions and programs to be used to do research in the area of food and beverage, or beverage specifically. And I'm very honored to hold that position within the Chaplin School, and I hope that I'm doing it justice.
Yeah, everything that I read about the fellowship and the fellowships and the scholarships that Coca-Cola promotes, it's always about innovative leadership, innovative thinking, and I think, being a fan, you clearly fall into all of those categories. So I'm sure it's well deserved.
Thank you.
So let's jump into some of the articles that caught my attention. And maybe you can share with our listeners and our viewers a little bit about what you found and what prompted you to write those articles.
Sure.
And I'll go kind of with categories that I've kind of placed them in. The first one is workplace bullying.
Yes.
So two articles that caught my attention. One was on bullying in the special event industry, and then bullying, the exploration of workplace bullying in the food service industry. So, and you came up, you had a great abstract. You came up with some good information. Do you mind sharing what you found and what prompted those research papers?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the food and beverage piece, it's within my stream of research. It's usually an F&B related study. But we also had access to people working in special events, so we took advantage of that. We also looked at lodging and another industry. We wanted to compare the different facets, and it just so happened that our significant results were just in food and beverage and special events. So that's why we published those and not the others. Maybe one day I'll get around to publishing them. This was written during a time where anti-bullying campaigns were really, really reaching their highlight. That previously, the anti-bullying campaigns had not been as loud, especially when it comes to the workplace. And so we thought, hey, we know this happens. We know this is happening in food and beverage. Let's take a deeper dive on it. And so that's what we did.
Great. And did you want to share any of your results? Was there anything that came out? Like one of the things that stood out is during our first conversation, I can't remember verbatim, but you said something to the extent of, we haven't moved the needle much over the last, as long as you've been looking at it, the needle hasn't moved much.
Yep.
And for me, it was upsetting, right? That the needle hasn't moved in creating safer workplaces and work culture around these topics. But then there was also a little bit of, hey, I know why the needle's not moving, because the approach isn't correct. The approach to training and the responses and the prevention, things being reactive rather than proactive. So I was excited for PAVE because I felt, okay, this is research that shows what's happening is not working. The type of training and the type of answers, the money that's being thrown at these problems is not working. So I was upset that, man, we haven't moved the needle, and you've given such impactful information to the community, and the needle hasn't moved. So do you have any thoughts on, why that needle's not moving?
I do. So I've been studying harassment in the workplace since 2003. And to this day, we still see the exact same problems, if not worse, because if you look at what's happening in our country, especially violence, harassment, social tensions, it's not getting any better. It's getting worse, right? So, and we would be naive to think that all of that tension, anger, etc., it's going to bleed over into the workplace. If it's happening in society, it's going to bleed over into the workplace, right? Especially hospitality, which employs so many people and involves so much interaction with other people, right? It's not like you're sitting in an office typically by yourself. You're going to be interacting with hundreds of people every day. And statistically, that just increases the likelihood of something happening, right? I cannot definitively say why the needle has not moved, but I will say that things typically do not change when people are not actively trying to make them change. You can say that you are trying to make a change every day, all day, right? You can put out campaigns to let other people know that you are trying to make change. But unless the people within the organization are actually taking action, change cannot occur.
Yeah.
And you can apply that to violence in the workplace, harassment in the workplace. You can apply that to lack of representation of minorities and people of color. You can apply that to anything that you feel should be corrected that we've been saying we're working on, but it hasn't. been
Right.
fixed.
I mean, my background comes from sport, and that's the same way within a small group of team athletes, right? Unless there's buy-in from the entire team, there really isn't a shift in performance and behavior and culture. If all the athletes are on board, but the coaching staff isn't, you're not going to have a successful team. And I think that's one of the strengths of PAVE programming is it really is a holistic approach, and it is the furthest from check the box training and reactive training that you could possibly be. And I think that it presents an opportunity for all stakeholders to sit at the table and discuss how they're going to move forward around violence in the workplace and change, make substantial change. And I think that's what's needed. We have a corny kind of little presentation slide in some of the presentations we give. And are you going to handle violence in the workplace by who's responsible? Like, who did it? Okay, let's handle it that way. Or are you going to be response able? Are you going to have the ability to respond to it beforehand? And it's a little corny, but I really like it because I think that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be response able, not responsible.
Absolutely.
The shift has to happen.
And if you look at it from a business stance, businesses are in business to make money, right? And if you are preventing something terrible from happening in your workplace versus reacting to something terrible, then it's only going to save, if not make you more money, right?
Okay, so listeners and viewers, this is why I love this woman. Did you hear that? It's not rocket science. It makes so much sense, but we just are avoiding it, and we have been avoiding these true and real and effective answers for a long time. But PAVE is doing everything they can, and people like Dr. Miranda are doing things to really create shift. So there are some other articles. So I wanted to discuss some of your articles on workplace bullying, but I think just as important, and PAVE training and PAVE programming can also impact, is how you research the glass ceiling and gender equality within the workplace. And a couple articles that stood out to me, I love the title, Still Pounding the Glass Ceiling, and Female Leaders Climbing the Ladder in a Me Too World. So share a little bit about those articles and how you feel about them, or what came about through the research for those articles.
Sure. Gender equality. This is a tough time to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy working on that research because I was able to hear stories from successful women and how they navigated that path to success. And it was not only inspiring, but it was just really beautiful to hear from women who made it, I guess.
Right.
So I'm not sure if your listeners are also familiar with the Castella College program. This is a group that is also really supporting women leaders, women in the workplace, in hospitality. And I would advise everybody to check them out. They're doing amazing things. The research was not only inspiring, but on the flip, it was a little bit frustrating because in order to collect data, I could not find as many participants as I would have liked to because they simply don't exist.
Mm.
So women at those levels, there's not many of them comparatively to their male counterparts.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be frustrating.
So it's...
Yeah. So I also see that you kind of coin something that I think is important, because when we deal with a term, and I'll share it in a second, but when we're talking about violence in the workplace, OSHA identifies a couple different categories, like the random criminal activity that comes into a workplace, employee to employee, and supervisor to employee.
I think there's also customer to employee.
Yes, customer to employee, and that was going to be my last one.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. And something that happened with an employee outside of work, but then is brought into work. And then customer to employee. And I love your term, building customer citizenship. I mean, customer citizenship, right? Wouldn't we love if we could give our customers that come into a restaurant or a hotel an irate or toxic customer that comes in, that we could just pull them to the side and say, here's a little module on customer citizenship. Share with me what your thoughts are on what it means, customer citizenship.
It's exactly that, right? Before I go into that definition, I do want to point out for all your listeners that we are seeing a rise in customer violence against employees in hospitality. My co-author Lisa Kane and I put out a great article, a trade article, so it's easy to consume, called Shielding the Messenger. And it kind of highlights the struggles that our hospitality employees are facing now more than ever, from hostile, aggressive, and violent guests, which is crazy to me because you're going to a restaurant to have a good time. You're going to a hotel to have a good time. You're going on a cruise to have a good time. Why would you bring violence into that and ruin everybody's good time, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we just need to get that term out there, I think, as many places as we can. Customer citizenship. Let's promote customer citizenship. I think that also there are strengths in being a good bystander. So sometimes a peer or a bystander within that situation can diffuse it better than someone who was working.
Sure.
PAVE believes very strongly into to be imparting the skill set on how do you comfortably become a good bystander. How are you an upstander for, stepping in and diffusing a situation, de-escalating a situation when you can? I think
sorry.
that would help to promote customer citizenship.
Yes, and I think we have to be a little careful now, especially because customer citizenship, when done right, is beautiful and helpful because there's a lot of things that employees cannot say or do in their defense to remain professional. However, sometimes we can see it done poorly and making the situation worse.
Yes.
Right? So I think everyone being educated on proper customer citizenship is important.
Yeah, I agree. So you also touch base on something that I feel is quite often overlooked in your industry, and I would say society on a whole, it's the stress, it's the pressure, it's the mental wellness issues, the mental health issues that lead to self-medicating, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. You had some interesting articles on how double shift work can contribute to that. You had some articles on employee satisfaction impacting alcohol use and drug use. I think we all were taken back as a country, if not a world, when we see suicides of people like Anthony Bourdain and other chefs where, it just got to them, their mental wellness and their mental health, and the lack of attention to that, unfortunately, led them down a hole to self-harm. So violence against self, I think, falls into the PAVE spectrum, and it's important that we create healthier workplaces so that we can ward off some of those things. But in the articles that you wrote, please share what prompted that, and anything, that your research unveiled there?
Specific to the substance abuse area?
Substance, yes, substance abuse, and what triggers those things, and why does it appear to be higher in that sector?
Sure. So the reason that I looked at that is because, again, I worked in the industry for many, many years. My husband continues to work in the industry, and we saw it, right? I don't know of another industry where during your break, you go snort a line of cocaine in the bathroom and then come back to your tables for refills, right? It definitely doesn't happen, to my knowledge, in many other industries. Perhaps I'm wrong. But it's the hospitality industry, particularly food and beverage, has a very well documented history of higher substance abuse, drug abuse and use, alcohol abuse, etc. There are several ideas as to why this happens, to include long and late work hours, non-traditional work hours, access to cash on hand, working in a party environment, right?
Yep.
Where everybody's drinking, everybody's celebratory, and often people who come to the establishments will, let me backtrack on that. I don't want to make a blanket statement. Sometimes people coming into those establishments to eat, drink, play will have substances on them. That plus the just stress of working in an industry where it's physically exhausting, it's mentally exhausting, everything has to be done just on a dime. You've got just so many factors that can contribute to this. And again, not everyone working in food and beverage is abusing substances. Not everyone in hospitality is abusing drugs and alcohol, but there is a higher number of people in hospitality than in other industries.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, and I understand what you're saying. My son is a chef, and he has been fortunate enough to be surrounded by chefs who have found their sobriety and have mentored him in a way that, hey, your sobriety is important, your mental wellness is important. Especially Chef Gigi out of the Pacific Northwest and the Denver area. My son had the opportunity to work with him in his restaurant's departure. We need more people like that in the industry who are willing to step up and to share their stories and their experiences and say, guys, there's a different path.
Yes, yes. And there's an incredible group. I'm blanking on the name, but there is a group specific to F&B employees that's similar to AA. Ben's Friends, that's the name of it. So Ben's Friends, in my understanding, is very similar to AA, but it's specific for restaurant workers. And I've heard amazing things about this group.
Great, thank you for sharing that. So this is going to be my last attempt to put you on the spot with one of your articles. I just thought it's fascinating being an athlete. I know the benefits of sports and what it does for your confidence, for your ability to think on your feet, for your ability to use all the skills of the OODA loop that you use in sport, right? To pivot, to identify, to access, and make decisions quickly. So I really found it really cool that you penned an article stating that intramural participation in sports creates better leaders in your sector. I thought that was really cool that you did something like that.
Yeah, I have to credit my co-author, Dr. James Williams, because he was doing a lot in this space. And I was curious because I didn't know much about it, had not even thought about it. And I was like, this is really cool. So much so that years later, now that I have children, I am pushing them into the team sports with every chance that I can. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's just so much that can be learned. There's so many benefits and values for participation in sport, and it doesn't have to be at a high level. But I mean, it just teaches you so much, you know. If you have a great coach, it teaches you like, man, okay, that's what a great coach looks like. If you have a bad coach or a not so great coach, it teaches you like, okay, those are the things I don't want to do.
yes,
You know, we had a friend of yours on our podcast, and he said, you know, initially his ideology on how to run a business, a restaurant, was formed in the reverse on people who he had worked for. Wow, I don't want to be like that. I want to make sure I don't do it like that. So in sport, it's the same way, right? You know, you could see a teammate with a bad attitude, and you could just go, man, okay, I don't want to be that guy or that girl. So yeah, sport has so much value. It's a microcosm of our society. That's what I say all the time, and the lessons learned there.
absolutely. And you can actually apply the benefits of teams and to sobriety. You can apply it to uh, pardon me, to not moderating, reducing workplace violence. Because when you have a team mentality, then you get that team resilience and you can
Yes.
lean on people instead of combusting, right?
Exactly. And the most successful teams communicate well, trust each other. You know, they have clear guidelines and goals and expectations. You know, those are all parts of the skill set when PAVE aims to reduce violence and change culture.
You guys are doing great things.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Dr. Miranda. So I have I'll share with our listeners and our viewers that we are super excited. We've already spoken on the podcast about PAVE hosting the first ever, the inaugural PAVE Summit, where we aim to bring in leadership from the sectors of healthcare, hospitality, emergency preparedness, sport, aviation. We aim to bring in leadership and have some substantial and meaningful conversations around how do we address reducing violence in the workplace. So this summit is really important to us. I'm super excited about it. And I'll share with our viewers that you are one of our premier speakers for this event. And we're super excited about that. But yes, you're going to speak to us on a whole. You're going to be one of our main speakers. But I'm really interested in sitting at those round tables with you and rolling up our sleeves and finding solutions. So if you don't mind sharing, what are your expectations and goals for the summit? How do you feel about it?
I'm truly honored to be a part of it, one, and I'm very much looking forward to the conversations. I think that one of the biggest benefits is going to be awareness, because I don't think that that many people even think about workplace violence, right? I know in the hospitality industry, a lot of these behaviors are considered normal. It's normalized for that environment, right? Without pointing out to someone, this is harassment, this is sexual harassment, many hospitality employees will go their entire career being negatively impacted and dissatisfied, but not really understanding why. So I think just bringing awareness that what is happening, at what degree it's happening, could be very eye-opening. And I think that that's another big piece of making change, is
Yeah,
becoming aware.
yeah, absolutely. And the idea that it's normalized, I think when we're able at the summit, when we're able to bring in hospitality and bring in healthcare and bring in other sectors and go, well, it's normalized in my sector as well. Oh, it's normalized in your sector. I mean, I think those are the type of discussions that are going to be really powerful. You know, because I think everybody's working in their own sector, hyper focused. And I think there are best practices across the sectors that can be shared and real contribution to solutions.
Absolutely. Anytime there's an interdisciplinary conversation, I think new ideas can be created. So I'm
Yeah,
really, really glad that we're going to have this opportunity.
yeah, it's very cool. So we're almost to the end of of this episode, and I ask every guest the same kind of closing question, so I will ask it of you. If you were fortunate enough to have the audience of one group or one person that you felt, man, if I just get a chance to meet with them and have a conversation with them, it'll have an impact, substantial impact. So if there were this one person or one group that you could have the audience of that would push this movement forward around reducing violence in the workplace, who might that be?
Without being political, I would say probably operations managers, not the top of the organization, but the people actually working every day with others, because I don't believe that they get the opportunity to make the decisions as often. I think that many organizations have a top-down approach, right, to policies and trainings and dollars that you're allowed to spend on training, et cetera. But I would want to talk to those managers that are actually interacting with their employees on a daily basis.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to give a little teaser to our audience. PAVE Prevention, Florida International University, and Dr. Miranda, we've got some really cool stuff in the works. We can't really talk about it yet, but I guarantee you, as soon as we can talk about it, I will have Dr. Miranda back on for a second episode when we can dive into this super exciting project that we're just starting to embark on. And it just shows, I mean, for me, how excited I am that Dr. Miranda is in our orbit. I think we're going to collectively, together, collaboratively, really make some awesome change, usher in some awesome change. So, Dr. Miranda, with that said, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Is there anything before we close out that you'd like to share with us, or anything that you're working on that you'd like our listeners or viewers to know?
Oh, goodness. Well, so many things. I'm trying to pick just a few. I would love to share that FIU is launching this DEI Alliance. I'm very excited about it. I am actually a Blooming Brands DEI Fellow, the very first one. So I'm so thrilled to work with my colleague Brian Barker in this space. And I think that that's going to be really cool, and also work towards some of these goals, because once we have diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's just another thing to, help reduce violence in the workplace, right?
Of course, yeah. And congratulations on that.
Thank
And
you.
I think that there is, violence reduction in the workplace and diversity, equity, and inclusion space, they are in one spot. They are
Yes.
together in space. So congratulations on that. And that'll be an awesome contribution to what we're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love having these conversations. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. So, okay, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed it. Super fan of Dr. Miranda. Keep your eye out for a second episode with Dr. Miranda coming soon. I hope we have. Hopefully, we'll be able to announce this huge initiative that we're working on. Again, if you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe. Check us out at our website, PAVE Prevention. You have been watching another episode of Disrupting the Dominoes. That's Disrupting the Dominoes of Violence. Thank you very much.